Once upon a time, back in the late 1980s, there was a man named Tom. He was a member of the Navajo tribe, living in the vast and beautiful lands of Arizona. One evening, after spending time with his family, Tom was going to his home. As Tom drove on the empty road, only his car's headlights lit up the dark road in front of him. Suddenly, he saw something by the side of the road. It was a figure standing in the darkness. At first, Tom thought it might be a lost traveler in need of some help. But as soon as he approached him, Tom felt scared. The figure was weird, and it scared him even more when he saw its face in the light. Its eyes were red, like fire, making Tom even more afraid. He didn't know if he should stop to help or just keep driving. But before he could make a decision, the figure moved. Tom's heart pounded as he realized this wasn't a normal person. Tom got really scared, so he accelerated his car and overtook the figure. But when Tom looked into the rear mirror, he got more scared. The figure was still there, chasing his car. Tom panicked, realizing he was being followed by something he couldn't understand. Desperate for escape, Tom accelerated his car to its limits. In a moment of desperation, Tom remembered something his grandmother had told him long ago. She talked about some sacred herbs that could keep away bad things like ghosts and scary stuff. With shaking hands, Tom reached into his glove compartment and pulled out a small bag of dried herbs. With a prayer on his lips, Tom tossed the herbs out of the window. He watched as they flew into the night. Then, something amazing happened. The shadowy figure stopped like it couldn't move anymore. And then, with one last angry scream, it disappeared into the dark, leaving Tom all alone on the empty road. Tom felt scared but safe as he drove home. He couldn't stop thinking about what happened. When he got home, he still felt like he had met a skinwalker, something very odd and powerful, something he didn't understand. He might never know exactly what chased him that night, but he would never forget how scared he felt. Once, my dad told me a story I'll never forget. It's the first tale he ever told me when I was just a little kid. But what really sticks is how it made me think about the world in a whole new way. You know how sometimes you hear spooky stuff on TV, or from people chatting, like about ghosts or aliens? You don't really believe it until something happens that makes you connect the dots differently. That's what happened to me. My dad told me this story, and at first, I didn't believe it. But then I started hearing similar stories online, and it got me thinking. My dad called it a skinwalker, based on an old story from his grandpa. But let me tell you the story the way my dad told it to me. We were out hunting one night, trying to make some extra cash by killing coyotes. Sometimes we'd hunt deer too. But one night, we stumbled upon something really gruesome in the woods. It wasn't a typical animal attack. Whatever did it left scraps behind like it wasn't hunting for food. Despite my dad's warning, we decided to track it down. The woods were noisy, with animals acting weirdly. We finally found it near an old, abandoned schoolhouse. It was this pale, humanoid thing with long claws, tearing apart a carcass. When it saw us, it attacked my dad, ripping him apart while I tried to defend him. In a panic, I managed to hurt it, and we ran away. Back at a friend's house, we barricaded ourselves in as the creature tried to attack us again. Eventually, it disappeared, and the police showed up. They said it was just a wild animal attack, but strange things kept happening afterward. Years later, my dad went back into those woods and never came back. Despite investigations, nothing was ever found. And that's the story of the Rake, or Skinwalker, a tale that still leaves me wondering. Last year, I moved to Washington State. I was new to the area. There was a forest nearby, and I was very much excited to explore it. Luckily, some friends who were avid hikers and campers invited me along on a trip. We decided to camp in a secluded spot not far from the Canadian border, about 25 or 30 miles away. There were 6 of us in total, plus 2 dogs, a Labrador and a Rottweiler. Everyone except me had a hunting rifle or shotgun. We parked our cars on a small dirt road and hiked about 4 miles into the woods. As evening approached, we set up camp and started a fire. While some of us were setting up the tent, two friends went to gather firewood. But they returned with a strange story. They had encountered someone acting strangely in the woods, and the Rottweiler chased after them. Later, as darkness fell, the Rottweiler began growling aggressively, and we heard unsettling noises coming from the forest. One of our friends, Tom, disappeared briefly and returned acting oddly. Throughout the night, we heard odd sounds and felt a sense of unease. At one point, we realized Tom was missing again. We heard his voice calling to us from the woods, but it sounded distorted and strange. Terrified and unsure of what was happening, we stayed awake until morning, huddled around the fire for safety. When daylight finally broke, we quickly packed up our belongings and headed back to our cars. To our horror, we found them damaged, scratched, windows smashed, and seats torn apart. Despite the damage, we were relieved to escape the forest and the unsettling events of the night. This experience left us shaken and bewildered, unsure of what we had encountered in those dark woods. But one thing was certain: we would never forget the terror of that night. We would always approach the wilderness with caution and respect.